All right, guys, we've got a 2017 Ram 1500. This one's got the 3.6 liter engine in it. The other day, this is a friend of mine. He brought it over, said that it just stopped cooling. So I checked the system, and it was completely out of refrigerant. I leak checked it down to the service port was leaking, and you can even see the all the residue from the oil leaking out of it. So I replaced both the valve cores in both service ports, started filling it up. We got 1.5 cans of 1234 in it, and the compressor locked up. So now it needs a compressor. We're going to put an expansion valve in it and a condenser. We're also going to flush the system out once we get it all broke apart. Looks pretty straightforward. Just going to go through it. Never done one of these, so this should be a good gauge for you to determine how long it'll take. Now, I do have my recovery machine. I've got a fresh tank. I have never recovered 1234, so I've got a new tank just for 1234. As you know, this stuff's pretty expensive. I got 4 cans, actually 5 cans. 5 cans of 1234 ready to go. So the first step is obviously to recover the refrigerant out of the system, and then we're going to start tearing this thing apart. So let me get set up and get started doing that. All right, guys, so we got our compressor, we got us an expansion valve, we've got the condenser. We just got to get this tore apart. I've got it evacuated, and first step is I'm going to take this shroud off, and we might be able to do that without any tools. It's just these little Christmas trees is all that holds this on. And it looks like it's been off before, so it popped off relatively easy. Put it on my untrimmed hedges there. And I think to make this job easier, I think this grill, you could probably do this whole job. You know what? Yeah, I'm not going to take the grill out. I don't think there's a reason to. I can reach down in here. I am going to undo the bolts right here for the radiator, because I think that will push the radiator and the condenser assembly forward to where it'll make it easier just to reach down and get everything unbolted and to help bolt things back up. On this model, the part of the condenser is the transmission cooler. So you've got 2 transmission lines right here that we're going to have to disconnect, and they just are connected with these little kind of like a C-clip. You pop these out, the line will come out. Probably going to get just a little bit of transmission fluid leaking out. And then at that point, you can see the bolts right here. And there's one bolt on the actual radiator itself that will need to be unbolted. This side, the brackets are bolted on, but they just slide into the receptacles right here, both on the top and the bottom. The new one, now the new one's bolted on here too. Sometimes these are actually all part of this condenser whenever they slide in, but not on this one. And then you got the AC lines right here. We'll disconnect them here. Of course, we'll get the compressor out and the expansion valve. So let me get set up and we're going to get started. All right, guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is just take the nuts off of the lines. They're 13 millimeter. there's a little clamp on the front, little plastic clamp. You just use a little screwdriver or whatever to pop it loose. Now we should be able to finagle these out of the way. You got a connector. And there's another connector down at the bottom. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and take the belt off and then start taking the bolts of the compressor out, and then the compressor should pop right out of there. Alright, try to remember which way the belt goes on. To get it off, just put your 1/2 inch ratchet in there. Come on. Okay, so what the dumbasses at Chrysler did is they put long studs for the bottom mounts. So those are nuts. You're going to take those nuts off. The problem is you can't pull the compressor off without taking the studs out. So depending on how tight the studs are, may cause problems. And the reason you got to take the studs out is because there's not enough space in between the steering shaft and the compressor to where you can slide the compressor off of those studs. So I'm just going to reach down, I'm going to zip those nuts off, and we're going to see how tight the studs are that's screwed into the block. And to show you the nuts I'm talking about, we're coming in through the wheel well. Okay, there's the tire. There's one nut, and then there's the other nut. Those are the studs that you're going to have to unscrew so that you can pull that compressor out once we get the top bolts out. Leave the top bolts in until you get these lower studs out. So I got the front nut off. I'm going to reach in there. I'm going to get the aft nut, and then I'm going to unscrew those studs. Hopefully they're going to unscrew with no problem. Okay, I got it broke loose. What I'm using is a long extension. I haven't even taken the tire off. Taking the tire off would probably give you a little bit more access, but I'm not going to at this point. So that's loose. The next question is going to be, how tight are the studs? There's that nut right there. Alright, so those studs are an E7 Torx. That's external Torx, is what that stands for. So I've got a whole Torx kit here, and I'm going to use the E7. Alright guys, so I was able to reach from the top down with a 1/4 inch ratchet in that E7 Torx, and they were not tight. So I was able to get them broke loose with no problem. Now I'm going to just see if I can use this extension on my impact to run them out. If I can get the bit on here. Okay. So there's that stuff. So both studs are out. Now all I've got to do is take the two top bolts out, and the compressor will come out. So that's the next step. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take the back bolt out using a ratchet, cordless ratchet with a 13mm shallow. Now I'm going to go ahead and go with the front bolt, if I can get on it. AC lines in the way. See if I can bring it up this way. See, the front hub is just completely locked up. This part right here, locked up. The pulley spins good, and this part will actually engage and lock up to the pulley, but it doesn't rotate the compressor because the compressor itself is toast. All right, so now that we got that off, the next is going to be this condenser. So let me get set up to get started on it. All right, guys, so again, I'm not taking the radiator out. I'm just going to take these bolts out. That way, hopefully the radiator will be able to be pushed forward a little bit so that we can access the connections easier. 13 millimeter, using a deep. One of these bolts on each side. All right, guys, I went ahead and disconnected this pressure sensor. That way, whenever I disconnect these lines, the line is not being, or the wire is not being stressed by moving the line around. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect both these nuts right here, and that's going to disconnect the lines at this point from the condenser. The condenser comes with this section right here. And then after that, oh, you can, I don't know if I showed you, but you can see how much more you got. You can move the radiator at least 2 more inches forward so you can access everything a little bit easier. So the next step, and I could have done this before I pulled these bolts out. I don't think it would have been any easier either way, but looks like these are 13. I'm going to zip those off. In fact, I'll do that right here on camera. I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible. I know people lose interest pretty quick, but I tend to like to try to show as much as I can so that people that's never done it or not feeling real confident can have every minute of my experience, I guess. All right, so those lines are off. Now you may need these new seals. The compressor and the actually the compressor, well, the compressor might have these seals, but I know the condenser and the expansion valve did not come with new seals. So you'll either have to reuse your old ones, which I don't recommend, because the last thing you want to do is fill the system up and end up having one of these connections leak. So I would highly recommend getting new seals. So at this point, there is a bolt down here, looks like 8 millimeter, we're going to have to take out. And then the bolts that bolt the condenser in, of course, these 2 lines right here, I'm going to show taking those off. I've got a plug kit that I bought just specifically for plugging off lines and stuff so that you don't make a mess. And it's just various size rubber or silicone rubber plugs, so once you pull a line off, you can plug the lines and stuff. That way you're not dripping stuff all over the place. So let me get the camera set up and we're going to get these lines popped off here. All right, so these little clips, the way they come out, you just pop them out, get a pick or whatever underneath them. I like to try to hold on to them the best I can, because if this slings across your driveway, you're going to be going to the auto parts store to get some more. And again, that lower one there, just like I said right there, if you don't have a good pair of mechanical fingers, this one actually has a magnet on the end of it. I highly recommend them, because that little clip, which is now fell way down here, is easily retrievable. These have been a lifesaver so many different times. All right, so at this point, these lines are going to be able to pop right out of here. And I want to try to get a rubber plug ready. I'm not sure what size I'm going to need. Hey, Tim.
I know you do your YouTube, sorry.
What you got?
I'm just going to say hello.
Oh.
How you been?
Been good. And I just plugged that line, that way you don't keep dripping transmission fluid all over. Okay, there's a 10mm bolt down here. I'm going to take it out to free these lines up so I can move them. Rubber plug it. So now, all that's actually left, we got an 8mm right here that I've got to get. I think this thing's ready to come out of here. So I had to pull up on this side of the radiator, pop it out of its little pocket down here to be able to finagle it out enough, but no big deal. Trying to stab that lower receptacle. There it is. Now, before I hook anything up, we're going to flush this system. All right. Make sure that these are in their little receptacles, both the top and bottom. I've got the brackets bolted on loose. Do not have the lines connected yet. We're going to leave all that loose. I'm going to take the expansion valve out. I'll take this plenum off to get it out of my way, and then we're going to flush this system out, and then I'll put the compressor in, and we'll be done with this. But right now, I guess I'm ready to just tighten all this up. I want to kind of lift up on it, kind of put it in its neutral position. And tighten it all up. All right, guys, so the condenser comes with the new clips and O-rings. All you got to do is push your tubes in, and then you're set. So put your clips on. Let me get this hose out of my way. And then make sure it snaps, and then pull on it to make sure that it doesn't come off. Same thing with this one. Now we're just ready to bolt the radiator back up with the 2 bolts here, and then it'll be the condenser and radiator will be all done. So I'm going to throw these 2 bolts in. I'm leaving all the lines disconnected right now, except of course for the transmission lines. And then I'm going to go after the expansion valve. All right, so for the expansion valve, you just got 1 nut that holds the manifold onto it, 13 millimeter. Now you've got some Allens that we're going to have to take off. All right, that is a 4 millimeter. And there's the expansion valve. Going to be a couple O-rings on there we're going to want to replace, but that's the expansion valve. All right, guys, I got my flush kit hooked up. Got my solvent in there. I just used denatured alcohol. Seems to work fine. Oh, I don't have the valve turned on yet. And all you do is you figure out what direction. Usually you look at your liquid line that connects to the compressor, which is your smaller line. That's the direction of the refrigerant flow. When the compressor is turning, it's pushing refrigerant into that liquid line. You want to go the opposite direction. That way, if there's anything lodged in the fins or the little tiny tubes of the evaporator or condenser or anything, it'll help dislodge that and push it out. Now, I'm not going to flush the condenser because obviously it's new, so it should be good. I am going to go and flush the evaporator, and I'm going to start here at the big line, pick it up, get this out of my way, and just blow through it. And it'll blow this denatured alcohol through it, help flush it all out. I'll do that all throughout the system. I'll take my hose here, stick it straight on the evaporator connection, blow through it. You don't want more than about 90 to 100 psi on this. And then I'll do the other hose. They're disconnected right here, so I'm just going to blow through the lines and just try to get it as clean as I can. And then I'll blow air through it to evaporate as much of the alcohol as I can, then put the compressor on, get it all connected. When you pull a vacuum, it'll evaporate any excess alcohol that may be in the system. So pretty straightforward process. I've always had good luck doing that. So anyway, I'll show you the start of this, and then I'm going to put the camera down and press on with the flush. And that's as easy as it is. Now I'm going to go to the next connection, and I'm just going to follow the system around until it's all flushed out. Okay guys, so I'm getting ready to hook these lines up. You want to put new seals on them. Again, they didn't, the new condenser did not come with new seals, unfortunately. So I'll put a link to this seal kit. That way, regardless of what size seals you need, you're going to have them. It did come with the new studs. You reuse your old nuts, but again, you're going to want your seals. Where's my line at? Here it is, right here. Then you just tighten them up. I'm going to go ahead and hook this sensor back up. Probably didn't need to disconnect that, but I just wanted to get it out of the way. And I did, I changed out the Schrader valves already. Whenever I leak checked this the other day, I'll show you let me show you the old Schrader valve core and the new one, and I think you'll understand why you may want to get your new valve cores. All right, look at this valve core. So there's your O-ring that whenever you tighten it up, it seals that off, but then whenever you push the core, you've got that inner plunger, and hopefully this is coming through pretty good, but you can see how that whole O-ring goes down inside there. Well, the way it should look is more like this. So there's your O-ring that when you tighten it up, that's what seals that part off, but then whenever you push it, you've still got O-ring showing. So this whole kit was like $10. And it's got all the different Schrader valves for all the different systems. So you might want to pick one of these up if you do much AC work at all. Anyway, back over to the car. All right guys, so I've got the new O-rings on there. I've got them lubed. Once I get the expansion valve on, I'm going to blow all that area out. I am disappointed with the expansion valve. It did not come with the new O-rings. I've got an O-ring kit. I will link that, because if you get an expansion valve, if it doesn't come with O-rings, you're going to be stuck. You don't want to reuse your old O-rings. I'm also going to need these seals, and I'll link to this to that too. I've got a kit, because again, nothing I bought came with these seals. Got my new seals on there. Got the nut started. Probably plenty right there. So now I just got to put the compressor on. So let's get started on that. Alright guys, so I pulled the plugs out of this new compressor. By the way, this new compressor does come with a new control valve, so you don't have to worry about swapping that over or anything. I'm going to add some oil to this. Now, this particular refrigerant, 1234yf, takes PAG 46. In this particular model, it's actually specifically 46-H. They make PAG 46 that's for 134A also. This system takes 1234, so I'm using 46H. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the compressor and pour about 2 ounces of oil in here. Now, the book tells you to pour the oil out of the old compressor. The problem is that compressor is locked up and I can't turn it to get the oil out of it. I got 3 or 4 drops is all I got out of the old compressor. So I'm going to, and I looked up in the book does not specifically tell you how many ounces total the system takes. Now, again, I flushed this system out, so there's virtually no oil in it. The condenser's brand new. I flushed out the evaporator, flushed out the hoses. This is a new compressor. The compressor does have some oil in it, I can tell, but I don't know how much. So I'm going to add about 2 ounces of oil to the compressor here. I'm going to turn the compressor. This is the suction line. We're going to let it go through the compressor. I'm going to put the plugs back in it, put our studs in that came with the compressor. That way, whenever we get ready to go back on with it, the studs will already be installed. Actually, I may leave the studs out. It'll just make it easier for me to get the compressor down in the hole. So I'm going to put the rubber plugs back in and stick the compressor down there, get it all bolted up. Then we'll put the plugs in. So I wish the book actually said a specific amount of oil. It'd make this a lot easier. So I'm just going to pour some oil in here. I'm going to turn the compressor, and yeah, there's virtually no oil being sucked down into the system because the control valve's not open. So I'm going to go ahead and put the little rubber stoppers back in here. I'm just going to hand tighten these little Allens. I may just leave that one just like that. I'm going to put this one in just so it doesn't fall off. We're going to go ahead and put this in. Now, this compressor did come with new seals also, so that was good to see. We'll put our studs and nuts up here. Then I'll show you how I'm going to add the oil whenever we're ready to do that. I'm just going to finagle this down in here the best I can. Let it rest right there. Now what you want to do is get the upper 2 bolts in, and then from the bottom you can screw both the studs in. So I'm going to have to actually move the camera, hold the compressor up, stab these bolts in, get them started, and then go from there. All right, I got that back upper bolt in. Four bolts started. Don't want to tighten it up because there's a chance those studs won't fall in there. So I would leave everything loose. All right. And if I didn't say it whenever I took this off, what I did is I got me a jack underneath the frame just to give me a little bit more room. Now we can reach underneath there, screw those studs in, get the nuts on them, and then go from there. So I'm going to get that done. I'll do that off camera. It's just a matter of getting these studs right here screwed in there. All right, guys, so I've got my new seals on the lines, both lines. I'm going to go ahead and get these connected up. This one here goes right here, and then this one here will go down on the back side. So I'm going to get those in there. Oh, I've got to put the studs in still, and then the nuts. Clamp that down. I'm going to put the both connectors on. This is for the clutch. Then there's one here for the control valve, and then the compressor will be done. We'll put the belt on, pull a vacuum on it, charge it up. All right, guys, so the compressor's all back together. Both lines are connected. The clutch connector is connected. The control valve connector is connected down there. You've got a little coupler right here that just secures the lines. That's reconnected. Lines are reconnected right here. Pressure switch is reconnected. You probably don't even have to disconnect that. Got a new expansion valve in. It's all hooked up. The system's flushed out. Got new Schrader valves in the system. Radiators back together. Bolts right here. And we are ready to pull a vacuum on it. And what I typically do when I'm pulling a vacuum is that's the perfect time to clean all the mess up that you've made. Get all your tools put back where they need to go and all that. I still got to put this shroud right here on, so I'll do that and then get started with the vacuum. All right, guys, so as I have the vacuum being pulled on it, I typically like to start trying to clean the area up, put my tools up, make sure everything's done. Still got to put this cover on. And if I haven't said it before, whenever you have a compressor that seizes up, there's a good likelihood that it has circulated metal shavings throughout the system. So you want to replace the condenser, the expansion valve, obviously the compressor, and the receiver dryer. Now on this unit, the receiver dryer is actually part of, and I'll show you on the old one. This is the receiver dryer on this system. So it's built into the condenser. So whenever you replace the condenser, you automatically replace the receiver dryer. But we also flushed the system out just to make sure there wasn't any metal particles living in the lines. So I'll let this run for about 30 minutes. I'll lock it down. I'll wait about another 15 to 20 minutes, make sure that it holds a vacuum with no problem, and then I'll shoot the refrigerant in. Now, if you don't know, you should have a label under the hood that tells you what kind of refrigerant. This is R1234yf. Tells you what kind of oil. This takes PAG oil. The oil that I'm using in this is PAG 46-H. This has actually got dye in it also. And it says right here, it says HFO-1234yf, which is what's in this system. So I'm going to put some of this in, not the whole thing. This is 8 ounces. Now I'll probably put about 3 ounces in it. And the way I do that is once I get the vacuum pulled on it and I'm sure that it's going to hold a vacuum, I'll stick the end of the hose in the oil, and then I'll crack the valves open here, and it'll actually, the vacuum will suck the oil into the system. So that's typically the way I do it whenever I'm using one of these type of bottles. You can also buy the can that you that's under pressure, and you use your can tap on it. But anyway, I'm going to let this run. I'm going to clean up, put the shroud on right here, and we're going to get some refrigerant in it and see how the system works. All right, guys, so vacuum's been pulling for about 30 minutes. We're sitting at about 28 inches of mercury. This gauge is a little bit sprung. So whenever it's on 0, it's actually on about 3 or 4 psi. So right now it's showing about 25 inches of mercury on the gauge, but you've got to add about 3 to that. So I'm going to let it sit here for at least 15-20 minutes, make sure it is rock solid. Then the very first thing I'm going to do is suck some oil into it. We'll use not quite half. I couldn't find any specs on what an empty system takes. The book says to empty the compressor, measure how much oil come out of the compressor. The problem is this compressor is seized up, so you can't turn it so that you can, get all the scrolls moving and empty out the oil. So I only got just a few drops of oil out of the old compressor. So, and then after flushing it, we got a new condenser, flushed through the evaporator, flushed through all the lines. I literally could not find anywhere that told me what an empty system takes for oil. There was a little bit of oil in the compressor. The closest I got was they recommended like 2 ounces for the compressor only, 1 ounce for the condenser, and then about ½ an ounce for the lines. So I figured 3 to 4 ounces total in this system. Hopefully we'll be pretty close to where it needs to be. So we'll go, maybe not quite halfway, since there was a little bit of oil in the compressor. Hopefully that'll do it. Now this is PAG 46-H with UV dye. So if this truck ever springs a leak, hopefully I'll be able to shine a black light on it, a UV light, and more easily find where it may be leaking from. I have cleaned up the Schrader valve areas that were leaking. That way, if it comes back and there's oil residue around them, then obviously that's a sure sign that it's leaking at that point. Anyway, I'm gonna let it sit for 15 minutes, then we're gonna throw some refrigerant in it. All right, so I let it pull a vacuum for probably about 30 minutes. It's been, the vacuum pump has been shut off for about 15. Gauges are still rock solid where they were at. I know there's sun. And I know it's showing about 25 inches of mercury. You got to add about 3 more inches of mercury because that gauge is a little bit, I need to pop this lens off and re-zero that gauge. I might do that if I think about it after this is done. So this is how I put the oil in the system. Literally going to submerge the hoe into this, into the oil. Maybe, there we go. Then I'm going to open the valves, and you're going to see that it's going to start sucking the oil. Once about half of it is in the system, shut the valves off. Now we're ready to put refrigerant in. Got about half that bottle in there. If that's not enough, or if that's too much, let me know. I could not find the specs. So I've got a full can. These are 8-ounce cans. And I'm just going to go ahead and got the valves locked off on the manifold. I'm going to depress the little check valve in here. I'm going to purge the system, or purge this hose. And now I'm going to open both valves, and I'm just going to let this can fill the system up. I'm not going to start it. Now I'm going to close the high side. Make sure the low side's all the way open. And I'll start the vehicle up. Make sure everything's clear, everything looks good. hopefully you can see the gauges. They might be upside down to you, but this can's almost empty. I'm gonna put the next can on. Next scan's going in. Compressor sounds good. Everything's looking good. You can see that high pressure went up to about 275, then the fan kicked on. When the fan kicks on, it's going to lower. All right, the camera locked up, so I don't know how much of that you got, but I've got the system charged. I'm checking to see how cold it's getting in here. We're down to 53 degrees. I've got the RPM bumped up to about 1200 RPM, and we're going to see how cool it gets. And just sitting here to standstill. Not going to get quite as cool as if you was driving down the road and you had air, plenty of air going through the condenser. And of course, R1234yf is not quite as good at cooling as 134, and 134 is not quite as good as R12 was. So it looks like about 51 degrees is what we're getting right now. Now it's coming on down a little bit, slowly but surely. I'm going to go get my scan tool, hook it up, and I'm going to see what the evap temperature is showing. All right, guys, so I've got the scanner hooked up. The evap temp sensor is at about 39 degrees, so that about 38 to 39 is when that temperature shuts the compressor off. So we're getting about 49 out of the vent, so that's about as cold as it's going to get sitting here to standstill. This truck, I don't know if they have a problem with the, since there's not a dedicated shutoff valve for the heater hoses, you've got your heater cord that's going to have hot coolant flowing through it, and I don't know if the flapper doors are able to shut off tight enough to prevent any of that heated air from mixing with the cold air. But I mean, the system's getting as cold as it can possibly get. You can always tell by looking at the evap sensor temperature. Most of these systems about 38 to 39 degrees. Whenever the evaporator temperature sensor gets to that point, that tells the computer it needs to cycle the compressor off so that you don't freeze the evaporator up. So I mean, everything's looking about as good as it looks. Outside air is 98. I was wanting to look at the pressures. I thought we had pressures the other day when I was looking at this truck. Oh, we do. So one nice thing about this MooCar and the ThinkCar scanners is right here it defaults to bar, even though I'm set to Imperial up here. We can actually use bar here, you know, in America, but obviously we prefer PSI. So the high side's sitting at about 166, which is perfect. That's a good high side for the, we're sitting at about 1300 RPM. The evaporator temp sensor is getting to be about 39 degrees for the compressor to, before the compressor cycles. We're down to about 48 degrees now here on our temperature. I don't know if you can even see that, can you? Anyway, we're done. This was a 2017 Ram 1500, and it had a seized up compressor, so we put a new condenser, compressor, and expansion valve in it, and flushed the system, and charged it back up. So he should be good to go. Anyway, you guys take care. We'll see you.